Thank you. And yeah, welcome to today's session. I think we've tried to focus on a couple of really important topics here. Collections, we know, is the lifeblood of many organizations, the commercial live stream to get the money in that's owed. And then AI, we can't actually do any session these days without talking about AI, but it actually is a really important topic in the customer experience space that I have the pleasure to lead. And so looking at how we can move forward in terms of the collection space, leveraging technology, but still offering a great customer experience and an effective process to recoup that revenue, I think it's really important to look at how we can do that. So today we're going to briefly touch on the state of the collections market today. We're then going to look at the Collections 2.0 framework and how the industry needs to be thinking about it. We want to give some examples of how leaders are winning, and then try to set a roadmap for leaders. And so we always try and be very pragmatic here at Everest Group, giving a sense of what can be done and how you can take this research forward so you can actually make it actionable. So that's what we're going to look to cover today. But we want to start on the next slide just with a poll. We'd just love to get your input, and I really appreciate any input that you can give in terms of how you see. So if we could launch the poll, please. What we're really looking for is just to understand what your biggest challenges are right now when it comes to the collection space. So there's a number of obviously options there. It'd be great if you could give us your view. Again, we're just really using it so we can make sure we focus our talk track, and we can also follow up with follow-on research as well to get a sense of what are the biggest challenges that people are facing. So we'll leave the poll open for about 30 seconds. I appreciate those people that are doing it already, so thank you for that. And we are seeing that data is one of the biggest challenges. We're seeing that already showing on the poll. I think if we can keep the poll open maybe for 15 more seconds, that would be great. And then we'll just take a quick look at the responses. So we've had over sort of 50% or actually 60% of the audience have participated. So that's great. So if you can give us your sense of the challenges. So maybe leave the poll for 5 seconds more, and then we'll look to close it. Okay, I think we're safe to close the poll. So actually, I think probably no surprise, but the number one challenge that we're seeing people saying that they've got is around data and that single customer view. And we do know that's a real big challenge for enterprises as they think about how they get an end-to-end view of their collections business. We've actually then see analytics and AI capability as being the second challenge. And then third was around legacy tech and integration. So that's really, as does actually align to what we're looking at. I mean, the push for AI is not just a necessity to say, oh, let's talk about AI, but thinking about how you can really leverage AI's capabilities around the analytical capabilities, and then how you integrate it with your legacy tech, because no one wants to rip and replace. And data has always been a challenge. I've been in this industry for far too long, 25 years, and data has always been the issue. I think there's more tools out there right now to actually give us a chance of fixing that problem, perhaps. So that's great that actually we know the problems and we're aligned on the problems. So I appreciate you taking part in that. So if we move on to the next slide, and let's just look a little bit about why is collections important and what are we seeing. So what you can see is the chart on the left is that we can see the US consumer loan delinquency rates. And what we can see is it's increased back to where it was and gone above where we were pre-COVID. So during COVID time, we did see the delinquency rates drop, but actually we've seen over the last few years or last couple of years that those delinquency rates have increased back to pre-pandemic levels and above. What we're seeing is that if you look, for example, at some research that the National Energy Assistant Directors Association did recently, US households owe energy providers around $20 billion, and that's 67% higher than pre-pandemic times. And we definitely know that actually, if you look at it, 1 in 5 US adults live in households unable to pay their utility bills. So collections and failing to pay bills is actually a really big issue for organizations. When we think about some of the key factors in that, you're looking at global inflation, which is in spike. We're really seeing the US household debt is increasing. We've seen serious delinquencies on credit cards rose by 12.3% as well. And it's not just a US problem, this is a problem across the globe. And what we're seeing is that there is a real sort of macro economic situations and market forces that are driving these rises. So it's the macroeconomic headwinds, it's consumer payment behavior shifts, it's that digital first customer expectation. So customers are expecting, they really do want a low friction interaction, but actually sometimes that's hard to do in this collection space. And actually there is increased regulatory scrutiny. So in different countries, different regulations about how you treat people from a collections perspective. And these are the things that are really challenging organizations right now. And if we move to the next slide, when we start then thinking about how do you operationalize this, when we start thinking about the need to tackle some of this delinquency, then you start to think about, okay, how do we do that? Do we throw resources at it? Do we throw money at it? What's the right way of thinking about this? And then these are some of the challenges that we see organizations are facing. And actually it goes to the challenges that were called out in the poll, really. But people are challenged with that operational and efficiency challenges. So how do you really balance that personalized, empathetic experience with the operational efficiency that all businesses need to drive? So how do you get that balance? You can't just throw people at it. You need to be operationally efficient. You need to have that personalized experience. But if you don't have the data, and we know it's a tough business to be in, high agent turnover is a problem in collections because it is an emotive part business to be in. It is wearing on the agents. And so we do definitely see there's a big churn of agents as well. The technology and integration challenges, it was called out in the poll, but how do you overcome these outdated legacy platforms and fragmented data systems? So again, going back to the poll, it shows that actually the challenges that we were calling out are very aligned to the challenges that the audience are facing. Regulatory and compliance challenges increasing all the time and really important to really then also be able to protect the brand. So how do you protect the brand? By having sort of these high risk customer interactions done in the right way, not making the customers feel too pressured, but being effective. And also, how do you make sure that's fitted into a wider customer experience ecosystem that organizations are trying to deliver? So really good that we're aligned, and I think we've talked about the challenges. As we move on to the next slide, what I'd like to make an offer, and it'll be posted in the chat before we go on to talk about Collections 2.0 framework, is we're currently working on a report which is actually looking at the Collections 2.0 approach and what we're seeing from an industry perspective. And we're willing for people that are on this to give you a complimentary access to that report, or to have a discussion with our team who focus on collections specifically around some of the challenges that you may be facing. So if you're interested in either getting a copy of the report or having a conversation with the team, then please request through the link that's been put in the chat for everybody, and we'll follow up and get you access to the report, or give you an opportunity to talk to the analysts who are covering this. So I think we've set the scene now in terms of some of the challenges that the industry are facing. Aishwarya, why don't you start to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of the Collections 2.0 framework and where we could be thinking of going in the future?
Sure, David. Please, if we move to the next slide, I would actually like to start again with the poll, because we love polls here at Everest Group. It's not about where you stand or where you currently are in your collections journey. We would just love for you to participate, to just understand where you are and then where you can go from here, because we're sharing a roadmap that will help you do that. So, which stage best describes your current collections operating model? Of course, reactive or manual, which means you more rely on spreadsheets or aging reports. The second option is defined but reactive. You have some basic segmentation in place, but you reach out to all the customers in the same manner. There's little segmentation. The third one is proactive, which includes some early warning triggers, risk segmented strategies, but at the same time, like whom to reach out to and when, but it's not really down to a science, and it's not really led by AI. And then the third last option is predictive or AI assisted, which includes ML scoring, really advanced AI-led risk segmentation, and the ability of the agents to really predict, share the ability of the ML to actually share next best action tools for agents to be able to say the right thing at the right time to the customers. And lastly, mixed or varies by BU or region, and then not sure. I would love your responses. I think we are at about 50%. Maybe we can close the poll in another 5 seconds. So, all right. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your response. Again, Not surprised. Most of the enterprises or participants have actually mentioned that they're in the first two stages, which is reactive or defined. And that's great because then, this webinar will really help you more in your strategy going forward. What we're seeing, so if we move to the next slide, please. What we're actually seeing is that there's an emergence of collections 2.0 now, which is more about the fourth option that you saw, which is predictive and AI-assisted ML scored collection strategies. Now, what that means is when we say collections 2.0, we're envisioning the future of collections to be both human, both deeply human, as well as both deeply digital as well. Now, what I mean when I say that is that Collections 2.0 really brings together customer centricity as well as AI-led decision making to be able to give the customers the best possible experience, while of course meeting the recovery goals or the collections goals that the enterprise might have laid out. Before diving deep into what Collections 2.0 is about, if we just touch upon the evolution of collections, initially, and as we've already seen in the previous slide, collections used to be a very transactional, very siloed activity in which all the agents reached out to customers in the same manner without really changing their script or even changing the way they try to approach the collections interaction, not really looking at the customer past history, behavior, missed payments or not, whether they are having a current hardship that's going on. So that was really very based on Excel and aging reports. Then we moved to something called Collections 1.5, which was still more strategic, which meant that there was some early warning tools in place. There were certain analytics in place, basic risk segmentation that was done. So there was a little more nuance in terms of how agents reached out to customers, but still it wasn't really very intelligent or it wasn't very personalized as well. That is actually what leads us to now Collections 2.0, which is very customer centric, highly data driven. Thank you. In this, we see that it's actually not a siloed approach anymore. Even within enterprises, it just doesn't sit within the contact center. The collections teams actually collaborate with the compliance teams, the risk teams, as well as the customer experience teams to ensure that there's a cohesive reach out, and then the reach out is compliant. It bears in mind the risk profile of the customer. It is highly personalized to be able to keep the customer experience at the center of the interaction. And with the help of technology such as AI and advanced analytics, it's actually able to deliver the right experience as well as the recovery is taken care of as well. How that's done, we'll move to the next slide and find out. So while there's no single, one way that Collections 2.0 works, or the best, what you do this and Collections 2.0 you're done, it doesn't really work that way. But there are certain pillars that define Collections 2.0 and are definitely part of a Collections 2.0 framework in however way you apply it. Talking about experience enablers first. Of course, empathetic, human-centric design is now the crux of Collections 2.0. What that means is we know in the UK in the last couple of years, there were almost, at one point of time, there were almost 50% of UK adults that came under the vulnerable customer category. So, of course, there is no way that you can reach out to such customers asking them or forcing them to pay their bills, pay their utility bills, or pay their gas bills, pay telephone bills, whatever it might be. There is a more human and more empathetic way in which you reach out. So empathetic, human-centric design is the crux of Collections 2.0, and all the other processes follow that. That also leads to better customer experience and better loyalty, as we'll find out in the next slides. The next thing is intelligent communication. So now, because of Gen AI, what has really happened is it's become really easy to actually come up with very intelligent, very personalized communication at scale. We'll actually see in the next slide that an insurer has actually been able to do that for almost all of their customers, resulting in much greater recovery rates as well as much better accuracy. Coming to tech enablers, predictive analytics and early warning systems. So Collections 2.0 actually entails advanced analytics in which we can actually understand what is the kind of risk profile of a particular customer, what has been their payment history, their behavior, are they facing any current hardships, any financial hardships that they might have. Using all of these data, there's an early warning system that's in place, which is of course AI driven, which can actually tell you how exactly to approach the customer, what their risk score is, and whether they would be able to pay on time right now, and how then to go about it. And then the last one is automation, digital self-service. This is pretty self-explanatory. There's no need to have a voice outreach all the time, taking into account their channel of preference, their consent-based preference. Agents can now actually automate digital outreach and then only reach out to customers on their preferred channel or through voice if and when needed, at the right time, within the right window that they can reach out, as well as with the right tone. So with these enablers, we actually see that Collections 2.0, for example, we actually saw that with the US bank, almost more than 100% of their target was met because, or their roll rates were reduced. And that is because of the way they applied Collections 2.0 in their frame. Moving to the next slide. This is actually the perfect example or a visual example of how Collections 2.0 works and how it's different from earlier collections, the way it used to run. So on the top part of the slide, you see that there's a very fragmented engagement throughout the life cycle. We start with a bill or a payment being due from the customer's end, but there were no triggers for payment. It actually comes a few days later in the aging report of the enterprise that this customer has actually missed a payment, and then there's a manual email sent or a call that is sent to the customer, and it's very voice driven, and in the same voice or the same email tone kind of goes out to all the customers, and there's little to no risk segmentation or segmentation based on the customer profile. You're actually it's almost like you treat the customer as if they do not want to pay, and then the tone is actually similar to that. But that is not something that Collections 2.0 espouses, because when we move on, we see that there's a generic payment plan that's offered. It's not really tailored to the customer's preferences, or even if taking into account whether they can pay right now. I mean, maybe it's possible that when you reach out to a customer, they say that maybe I'll pay in a month. So you say that, okay, instead of saying, okay, let me reach out to you again in a month, you instead say, no, you have to pay right now, or we will, cut your gas or cut your gas connection, something like that. That really does not work, and that was what we used to do in Collections 2.0. This, of course, leads to a loss of customer loyalty, customer lifetime value, and of course, you risk alienating the customer right from the way you ask them to pay back. Cut to Collections 2.0, you see that the outreach or the interaction is highly proactive, it is digital, and it's rooted in empathy. So starting from even before there's a customer missed payment or a bill that is due, there's a risk score that is assigned to each customer through the early warning system and the ML assisted, AI assisted tools that are out there. Once that is done, there's a consent that's captured from the customers, how they would like to be reached out to, with channel, etc. And then if they don't respond on that particular channel, then there's a phone call that goes out, but it's not a generic phone call. It's a phone call, for example, that they will respond well at Friday at 7 p.m. because that's when they have time, and they're actually open to paying back their debt, maybe if you give them a 3-day extension. That's exactly how smart Collections 2.0 is, and how highly personalized the outreach is for each and every customer. There is, of course, human assistance involved for vulnerable customers. So even if it's not on a voice channel, you can send them a message saying, hey, we know that you'll be able to pay in a week's time. So we are giving you this link. This is active till a week, and we're open to you paying within that time frame. And of course, there's a human agent that reaches out if there are vulnerable customers, again, keeping empathy and human-centric design at the core of their interaction, while giving them available options that they can avail if they're facing hardships. Lastly, there's analytics tuned offers because of the highly personalized outreaches, Gen AI and AI analytics based scoring that is done. And the next best action that is offered to the agent that, okay, instead of saying, hey, why don't you make the payment in the next 3 days, maybe tell the customer, you can make a weekly payment of, let's say, $200 each, and then you'll be able to reach your goal in a month's time. So we are actually giving you an extension, and you're also holding the customer accountable by giving them a weekly payment plan instead of asking them to pay $1,000 upfront. So that's how the analytics and AI really helps. And then lastly, monitoring the promise to pay, kept, and roll rates, just to ensure that uh, uh, all this approach is actually delivering results. And then, of course, continuous optimization and AI model tuning, which the AI does itself to continuously improve and understand whether it's decisions that were about giving customers extension or decisions about the right channel, etc., were right. And then the AI model tunes itself. Of course, leading all of this leads to fewer calls, higher right party contact, higher accuracy, the right person contacted at the right time. Caller ID authentication, of course, also helps with, there's no spam call, it's not labeled as a spam call. There are higher promise to pay kept ratios because you have done the personalized outreach, because you have given them the prep options of payment plans that best works for them. Lower cost to collect because there are self-serve options that you offer to the customer that you don't even need to talk to them, or they don't want to talk, they don't need to talk to you if they don't want to, and they can directly go and do the auto pay. Better compliance by design, because all of this is actually then in the back end, it's all recorded in the CRMs, and then AI comes up with summaries, who was contacted at which time and whether that was the right time to contact them. So there's, of course, better compliance just by design, because AI will tell you can't contact them after 6 p.m. because they are in this geography. So that really works well. And then, of course, lastly, because the customer feels taken care of, the customer feels supported, there's more loyalty, less churn. And of course, you actually I expect that the customer will be a lifetime customer because of the way that you handle them with respect and with dignity. Moving to the next slide. Of course, now if we deep dive into AI in the Collections 2.0 framework and the importance of AI, the example that I was talking about earlier was that Allstate, which is a general insurer, many of you might know about it, almost all its claims are now claims on email. They're almost all of them are drafted by generative AI. Of course, an agent looks at it before it's sent out to the final customer, to the end customer, but this actually ensures that the tone is very personalized and it's highly empathetic as well, attuned to each customer's risk profile and the way they've been interacting with Allstate over the past few months. The 6 pillars of generative AI and how generative AI is actually aiding Collections 2.0 is personalized outreach at scale. I already spoke about it. Regulatory compliance, automation, and audit trails. Of course, if you have already recorded all the interactions, you've auto-scored the interactions as well, which is where auto QA and agent copilot comes in the picture. And you have been able to go through it and see what the agent sentiment was like, what the customer sentiment was like, as well as what the compliance score was. You're able to automatically record all of that, and that helps with auto QA. Empathetic language and vulnerability support, making sure that the customer, if they're in a financial hardship, then giving them the right options, and the supportive tone of language, which helps them feel taken care of. Empathetic tone and language adjustments, and then finally agent assistant training. This is where AI really helps, because AI actually tells you they are going through, based on their last 5 maybe financial statements, if that data is available, they're actually going through some, they don't have much bank balance left in their account. So then the agent automatically says that okay, we understand that you might not have very liquid assets right now, so maybe we'll reach out to you again in a month, and maybe we can speak again then about your payment plan. So these things are really important, and these are some of the ways in which generative AI has really supercharged Collections 2.0, and it's the foundation of how collections is being reimagined. Moving to the next slide. Here we're gonna, of course, these are some of the rates or the KPIs that have become important in Collections 2.0. the most important one's collections rate or collections effectiveness index. It's just about within a certain period of time, say a month or a year, what's the effectiveness of collections, what's the recovery rate like, and of course, the higher it is, the better it is. Then there are some others as well, but I actually want to bring your attention to something called promise to pay kept rate, which measures how often customers actually follow through on the promise that they've made, that they will pay at a particular time in a particular through a particular channel. And that's actually what helps. If the promise to pay kept ratio is high, that actually helps the AI model again get tuned to whether this channel and this payment method works for the customer or not, so that they can tune themselves and use it again and again for that particular customer. And then the last one is cost per dollar collected, CPDC. This is again a very prominent KPI in Collections 2.0. It evaluates the operational efficiency, the cost efficiency of collecting each dollar. What is the cost that actually goes behind collecting each dollar? This is, of course, varies widely across industries and across even geographies to some extent. But what we've generally seen is in mature agencies and mature operations where collections is done in a highly efficient manner, it's close to 7 to 8 cents per dollar. And in less efficient operations, it's about 10 to 12 cents per dollar collected. So, of course, the lower it is, the better it is. So, those are some of the KPIs and collections. So before we move to the next section, I just want to say that Collections 2.0 is a highly evolving space right now. We are, of course, witnessing it as we move along, but we'd be happy to, there's a report that's upcoming, and if you're interested, we'd be happy to share that as well. Moving on to the next slide. Rishav, over to you.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Let's now move on to one of the important segment of this webinar, where we would want to tell you how the leaders of this collection beast have been able to tame it. Collections has always been thought of as a back office transactional function, but with delinquency pressure rising, digital first expectation from customers, and regulators tightening the screws, the old playbook of repetitive calls and static scripts will not work anymore. Across our research, which is part of our complementary access, we identified 6 macro trends. The first one is shift towards omni-channel and digital first strategies that leaders are adopting. An increased integration of collections with the CX function, and growing reliance on third-party service providers for the scalability. And at the same time, there's a heightened regulatory scrutiny around the whole collection process that enterprises are putting up. And there's also focus around the operational KPIs, which Aishwarya just spoke about, and adoption of AI, cloud, and advanced analytics within the overall collection process. If we talk in depth around what are these factors that and these levers that leaders of collections are employing, they are deliberately decentering around voice in early stage delinquency. The pattern is consented emails, SMS, application notification first, followed by a verified brand call, and then agent are reserved for intent-rich or sensitive moments. This results in 2 immediate impact. One, a higher right party contact at lower effort, because branded calls that are flagged as spams have higher acceptances. And the second is more self-serve cures, because paying or setting a plan is 1 click away, not a 10-minute phone call negotiation. In fact, a North American bank had cut in call volumes by double digits, but was able to actually raise their answer rates once they layered in branded caller ID and introduced digital nudges. Customers were picking up because the outreach felt legitimate and timely as well. In fact, one of the participant had a question around how the collection strategies can balance improved recovery rate while maintaining a positive customer experience. And we had these questions from our earlier members as well. So there's a very straightforward answer: maintaining that empathetic tone while being adopting a non-judgmental language. What that means is generally collections can trigger stress, defensiveness, or even shame. but customers respond better to supportive, solution-oriented communication rather than scripted or confrontational messaging. Framing outreach around phrases like "we are here to help" or "let's find a solution together" and proactively offering hardship support, especially for first-time delinquents, can de-escalate tensions and drive better engagements. The other factor that we are seeing is integrated org structure that the leaders are implementing. Collections is becoming more cross-functional. Across different touch points within the process, we have multiple orchestrators. CX team designs the journey, risk sets the guardrails, compliance co-authors the language that's gonna reach the customers, while analytics helps tunes the target audience.
And
And
Rishabh,
when
just
these
one point to make. Sorry, Joe, I'm just
sure.
going to make a point really, which is I think that we've often look at collections, and I think you said it or Aishwarya said it, which is it's a back or was seen as a back office process. But I think we also sometimes forget that customers on the receiving end don't see themselves as being spoken to by the back office or the front office. They just it's a reflection of the brand, and I think it's really
Yeah.
important that collections has to be done in the right way, because they may be delinquent now, but their situation can change and they're still a customer, and they will be a loyal customer if you treat them right. And I think that actually doing collections in the right way actually builds more loyalty than loses loyalty. So I think it's really important that we don't ever lose sight of the individuals here and actually label them as a front office or back office process. They're human beings, and actually whenever you're talking to them, you're representing your brand. So I think this is all really aligned to where we're seeing organizations trying to go in terms of building loyalty, and it's every touch point that the customer will have, including collections. So just wanted to call that out.
Exactly, David. And that's why organizations have been trying to, restructure their collection, not as a separate team, but as a part of their overall customer experience, because at the end, even those customers matters. In fact, there was a telecom company that moved collection under a shared customer health umbrella, which was able to cut involuntary churn among delinquent, but high value accounts by prioritizing save offers over threats. There are other external factors as well, which the leaders have been implementing. Collections across stages, early to mid to late stages, is shifting towards specialist partners who bring the digital reach, speech analytics, rigorous quality analysis, and it's majorly because BPO can differentiate across two major important areas across their tech capabilities as well as the kind of compliance strength that they hold. Even here, the governance model matters more than the locations. While the creators set the strategy, keep data compliance tooling central, their partners are executing those within these guardrails. At the same time, the regulatory environment is changing, and it has been getting more tightened with 100% call monitoring being expected, and this has led to compliance by design among the leaders, which Ashwara also spoke about. So to give a takeaway for this whole what leaders are doing operationally is operational excellence is less about more capacity in the system, but more about better orchestration across channel, teams, partners, and regulators. If you move to the next slide, we have spoken in here about different tools, different levers that leaders are not just implementing individually, but cohesively to extract the best and get the best result for their collections team. Now, there are things like AI contact strategies, which is like decide whether the organization is able to decide when, where, how to reach customers, or things like analytics and risk segmentations, which is Ashwara also spoke about, which are able to flag any pre-delinquency risk, or for that matter, omnichannel digital first, where early touches go digital by default with a clear action path, which helps boosting the PTP capture rate, because customer can actually choose when they can meet, when utilities are adopting one-click enrollment rate for assistance program, and they saw pretty good spike in the take-up and area cures within days. The crux of this whole these levers are customers often feel pressure or caught off guard by traditional collections outreach. These tools and technologies are empowering organizations and helping customers also with having those self-service tools to reduce frictions, providing 24 into 7 digital access via apps, SMS, web portals, to being able to view the balances, choose repayment plans, schedule payments, and thus at the end of it, giving customer the control, which improves both the satisfaction as well as resolution rate. There are other things as well. A couple of participants did highlight the concerns around data, data structures and having a cohesive view of data. So leaders have also implemented cloud-based platforms, a modern stack where you have an integrated CRM, payment and channels and analytics, which means that one customer view is available to the agents. There's faster changes and portable playbooks across geographies and partners. This is what's led strategy and not headcount-driven performance. Moving on, if we talk about is location an important factor in collections? While it might look like collection 2.0 is location agnostic, but to say it is agnostic for routine work, like helping with digital nudges or scoring of these delinquent age, but it is location sensitive for moments that actually matter. And to give you a useful split, leaders are using onshore locations to handle strategy, oversight, and also for handling complex or sensitive cases, as well as for supporting regulatory interfaces. Whereas they are using nearshore, which is helping with bilingual reach, helping with the time zone alignment for chat or voice purposes. Whereas offshore is helping them with the scale that's needed for the standardized workflows, especially in this analytics-rich, tightly monitored environment. To give you an example, a credit issuer kept high value or a vulnerable customer onshores, and it moved the standardized early stage queues to a partner in Philippines with shared tooling and branded calling and having approved language libraries as well as AI-based QA system across its 100% of interactions. What it helped is with onshore specialists being able to focus on restructuring and saving the customer offers, whereas self-serve was clearing a large share of these queues, which before human even can touch the file. The net effect was better coverage, fewer compliance incidents because everyone operated on the same cadence, consent, and script controls. I will hand over to David again to talk about how, what was the roadmap that leaders or the participants of this webinar can take to implement that Collections 2.0 frame.
Yeah, thanks, Rishav. Yeah, and I think that, as I said, we always try to leave people with at least some practical areas to be thinking about. We can't give all the solutions in a 45-minute webinar as you'd expect. But if we move to the next slide, please, what we'll see is that as we start thinking about the roadmap for leaders, what we wanted to do, first of all, is just sort of ask some of the barriers that you're facing. So if you don't mind answering this question as well, and again, we're not going to be shaming anybody here, but what's the biggest barrier to adopting Collections 2.0 in your organization? So hopefully you've learned some stuff about what we think Collections 2.0 is looking like. What's the view in terms of what's going to stop you being able to implement it when you go back to work tonight or tomorrow, depending on where you are in the world? So appreciate if people could sort of give us a sense, and that will also help us to target some of our future research into, okay, how can you overcome some of those barriers? Because we always try to make our research based on the challenges that we know our audience are facing. So if we know what challenges people are facing, then we can make sure that we're we're focusing on that. And I think it probably is going to be fairly similar to the challenges that we saw at the beginning. But if we can leave the poll open maybe for 10 more seconds, and if we could get just a few more people to give us a view, that would be great. We've got more than 50% of the audience who's given us a view now, with almost 50%, so that would be great. So what we're seeing is, I'll leave it open for five seconds more, but what we're seeing is that data foundation, so quality and access or lack of unified customer view is one of the leading challenges people are saying. So 34% of the audience have said that. We've actually seen legacy tech. So again, it ties back to the beginning. So I think we're probably not surprised that data, legacy tech are the two main reasons. But actually, interestingly, budget and ROI, the business case is not proven, or competing priorities is third, or actually the second most, the biggest barrier really, with 24% of the audience saying proving the ROI to the business. And I think that's an interesting one, because obviously, as we've talked about, driving collections has a direct impact on the bottom line, also impacts brand. So interesting that businesses struggle to demonstrate it, but a lot of the time it's because there's a sense that it'll be marginal improvements by leveraging technology. The investments in technology can be incredibly complex to achieve, and every enterprise has multiple priorities for their technology budgets. So I can understand that that is a challenge for organizations. So thank you for sharing that. So budget, tech and tech integration, and then data, the three main challenges that businesses are facing. So thank you for sharing. So if we move on to the next slide, what we've tried to do is to start to talk about, okay, what would you need to do if you're looking to transition to Collections 2.0? And we're not expecting people to do this overnight. I mean, everyone on this call is probably a practitioner. We've done a lot of research into this area, but we know it's not as easy. I mean, when Aishwarya was talking, I was sitting there thinking, yeah, that would be great. But if I was a practitioner, I'd be sitting there thinking, yeah, but it's not that easy. We make it sound easy because we're providing a perfect view of what could be done. But we know there's challenges. But what we would be recommending is this step process where we start to think about, okay, first of all, you need to understand where you are. So assess and benchmark. So what's the current delinquency rate, which I'm sure that you understand, the current contact success rates, recovery KPIs, but understanding where you are, because that would also then help to demonstrate the ROI when you can start talking about some of the incremental benefits that you can achieve by using Collections 2.0. You actually be able to show the business case for doing it. The second point, though, which actually, again, totally acknowledging we're making it sound easy, and it's not easy, but build the data and tech foundation. But really, that's to be the underlying, factor that people have to do here, which is, okay, how do you get the data into a state that you can actually leverage it for Collections 2.0, and what tech is needed? How do you integrate the systems that you have? No one wants to rip and replace, as we said earlier, with the technology that may be needed to catapult you into Collections 2.0. So building that data and tech foundation, and we're seeing different strategies being deployed, people partnering with specialists, partnering with their existing outsourced service provider. And my advice is, having, say, been on the buyer side for many years, is think about what your requirements are and then look at the market to understand who's out there, who's got those capabilities, or can you do it yourself? But looking at what you need to achieve, but building that data and tech foundation is going to be a fundamental step in this journey. Once you've got that, and again, not underplaying how hard that would be to achieve, then it's about piloting these strategies, leveraging the AI and the analytics to really test how effective that is. A/B test strategies, really thinking about, okay, how is this working? Is this resonating with our customers? If it's resonating, are the results driving benefits that we expected? And then if they are, then obviously that's where you look to scale up and automate, and then really starting to think about, okay, how do we drive this wider? How do we leverage the IVAs and the chatbot outreach, the omni-channel support and the flows, auto pay enablement, etc. So once you've piloted and proven it's resonating with your customers, because we know that if you look at the UK, for example, there's organizations that have pushed people online, but actually a lot of their older demographics don't want to work online. So you have to be able to test it for your demographic to say, how does that work for the right audience? And is it going to be successful? And then once you get to scale and automate, then it's about sustaining and optimizing, because the technology is starting to move at a real fast pace. You've got to think about how do you institutionalize it across the customer experience function. How do you drive compliance? Although you need to think about compliance right at the start in everything that you do, but how do you drive compliance on an ongoing basis? And then how do you continually improve the model? So it's really important, I think, to be able to build that up. But actually, I think, again, I want to sort of really stress that number one is easy. Number two is the big challenge, because I think you probably mostly have benchmark data, but that building that data and tech foundation, and that's where we'll be doing more research as well as we think about moving forward for Collections 2.0, in terms of what does that data and tech foundation look like? What's the tech that's needed in this space? Where's that available? What type of technology is it? And then how can you also get control of data? So that's really what we would talk about in terms of those 5 steps that we'll be looking at. So I think we're coming to the end. I don't know, Rishav, if you can move to the next slide. I think we're starting to sort of get to the end, but I don't know if there's any questions that people have. But and I encourage you, if you've got any questions, just put them into the Q&A. But the last thing that we'll leave you with really is, as enterprise are starting to think about showing leadership in collections, it's all about that blending the technology with the compliance and the customer centricity to really use collections as that strategic advantage. And what we see is that it's all about hyper personalization, to really understanding the customer, their contact preferences, when the channels that they want to work with, the timing that they want to be contacted, the type of messaging that's resonating for them. It may be different by geo or demographic, to really be able to try and drive that hyper personalized message. You then also think about the agents that are going to do that, and it's actually a mix of human and AI agents, digital workforce. So virtual agents can take some of the routine activity off of people's plates. So then you can use the humans to free them up for really high value activities. So when you're dealing with such things such as hardship resolution, disputes, vulnerable customers where you really need high levels of empathy, then actually that's where you're freeing up your humans. It enables you to control your budget by having the humans focusing on the high empathetic, highly complex issues, and then looking to leverage AI agents who can do the mundane, the repetitive tasks that today you may be paying an agent for. And then underpinning all of this, and we should have probably said this at the start, but ethical AI, compliance by design, is fundamental to this. So every single model, we need to be thinking about how you can stay compliant, because no one wants to break compliance in this space. It's really important to stay compliant. But ethical AI is becoming a really important part of this as well. So if it's agents using the AI, the traceability, the understandability, but if you're exposing it to customers, how you're demonstrating ethical AI. So ethical AI is becoming an increasingly important topic across the entire customer experience space. And again, that's an area that we will be doing more research on, but that needs to be built in from the start. So thinking about the ethical AI and compliance, how you leverage the agents that you've got available to you, both human and digital, and then how you make that hyper-personalized customer experience. I don't know, Rishav, Aishwarya, anything you want to add to this slide? I know you've been really close to the research.
In fact, David, around ethical AI, there has been 2 parts of the question. One around was the limitation around AI or ML for collection process, which of course Aishwarya answered around in the chat. The second question that enterprise keep asking is how do we ensure that AI models that we are using in collections remains unbiased and ethically sound? Now, there are 5 simple steps to ensure, but the first one is to maintain the data governance and keep doing the bias testing. Run periodic fairness test, ensure that repayment offers and outcomes do not differ systematically by race, gender, or age. Also, ensure that you are regularly auditing training data for representatives. The third one is explainability. Now, it's a very simple thing, but what it helps is enterprise cover the base around compliance. What it means is use those models that provide human interpretable reasons for scoring or recommendation, like a high utilization, missed 2 payments, and that's why it's being flagged. This helps you, help understand with agents as well, as well as it helps you satisfy regulatory expectations. The last few, how you ensure AI models remain ethically compliant are having those feedback loops or maintaining those human oversights. But any enterprise implementing AI will need to have all these guardrails to ensure, the beast of AI remains most useful around the collections.
Thanks, Rishav. And there has been a question which was asking around, with collections being a personalized process, then human intervention is more involved to collect the outstanding, and what's the limitations of AI and ML? And I think that hopefully we try to cover that in the last few minutes, but from our perspective, it would be the AI can be used to help the agent to be more efficient, more effective. It can also be used on some of those more mundane tasks, but definitely humans are going to be vital when it is highly complex, highly empathetic, contentious issues. But it enables the organization to be able to balance the budget, because let's be realistic, every organization has a budget for this type of activity. And by being able to leverage humans where it's most effective and most important to deliver that great empathetic experience to the customer, but also an effective solution for the business, which is to get the funds back, then actually then AI and machine learning can be used to actually take some of the other work away to free up that cash and that budget for people. So I would say there are limitations, and limitations will be where you do need that human touch. And every organization is going to be different. Some organizations will want humans in many more places. Others will only pick a certain few instances, and every brand will have to decide what's right for them. There are different, depending on the type of industry you're in, the demographic you're targeting, how you would apply this. But I think that there are limitations to using the technology, but out of the gate, we would see we could be used to actually free up that budget and free up humans to do the work that's most important. So we've come to the end. So I appreciate your time. And thank you for those that have put a request for the complimentary report or a chance to talk to the team. We will be following up with all of the details. And if there's any questions that have been logged previously or during this session, then we will follow up with that after. And yes, there will be, the report will be made available to people after, the copy of the slides will be made available as well. We have a whole host of different blogs that people can look at, but again, appreciate taking an hour of your time today and look forward to continuing the conversation.